Okay, now we're going to be going into into talks every 15 minutes. If you'd be so kind as to keep the area clear in the back from the camera. Good. Okay. I have a very, very quick story to tell regarding the next speaker. He is the 10-year chairman of the EFF, the Electronic Freedom Foundation. Frontier. My mistake. I always think foundation. I've got so many foundations in my life. Which sadly I may need the services of very soon because I almost didn't make it to this bill. As of 3 days ago, there was a warrant out for my arrest from a federal judge. That's not a joke. I'm dead serious. It makes me sound far more interesting than I really am. But they very much want some people's private data, and I very much don't want them to have it. Not because it's mine or I care personally, because in fact it's not mine, and I want other people to have their data. And so as a sad side effect, I am having to defend this in court for 2 solid years, and I'm continuing to fight this battle. But next week or the week after, they are asking me to come down and explain why I shouldn't be put in jail right then and there until I comply. And so it's a scary thing. Luckily, I'm able to take care of myself mostly, but there are humans out there that are not able to. It is amazing what's happening in the world when it comes to information. This gentleman to my left here, Brad Templeton, he is one of the good people. He's one of the people that upholds our personal rights. And everything he does is interesting to me. And when he showed up first at the very first bill, it was like, Brad Templeton's here? Okay, now we're cool. And with that said, I didn't say you dress well. I just simply said you're cool. We're going to have to talk about clothing later.
The shoes or something.
With that said, I would like to have you all give a round of applause for Brad Templeton.
AI is easy. It's AV that's hard. All right, are we good to go? Very good. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about a project I'm working on right now, which is self-driving cars. There's a team at Google that I'm working with that's building a car that drives itself. I'm not speaking for Google here. Do not attribute anything I say to Google. But nonetheless, I gave a talk at the first bill on my vision for this technology and how it was going to change the world, and talked about how we probably would have that in the early 2020s, and everyone said, you're a crazy optimist. And then at the next bill, or bill after that, I gave a talk about all the things that had happened since then and some of the precursor technologies that we're getting on the road, and everyone said, you're a crazy optimist. So I'm here today, just 4 years later, to say these cars are here and on the road, here in 2012, and will be for sale, at least in a limited extent, later on this year, not from Google, but from Mercedes. So let's see if I can... Okay. So to briefly go over the 5 big changes that are going to happen to the world before I tell you about what's happening. First of all, we believe we want to make cars that are safer than human beings. That's not a very high bar, fortunately, because human beings kill about 1.2 million people around the world. So there can be a massive saving of lives and injuries. And when we talk about 1 million people dying, that's the largest cause of death between when childhood diseases get done with you and you start getting into the decrepitude period. I believe it's going to enable transportation that's both personal and efficient, more efficient than public transit, as it turns out, several times more efficient than American public transit. It's going to be able to put many more people on the same infrastructure, and it's going to give us a vast reduction in the amount of land we have to devote to cars, particularly to parking. Finally, it's also going to change delivery and retailing and everything pretty much about the city. The car redefined the city. I have to go over there to do that. This is the first DARPA Grand Challenge, which some of you are familiar with, second one challenge actually, where they asked people to drive in the desert. And by and large, it was a big failure, the first one. The second, there's my friend Anthony, forgot to turn on his stabilizer. The second one, however, had 5 cars that completed the 150-mile course in the desert. This is the Stanford Car, which was the winner of that contest. Later, they did an urban contest on city streets. Google hired the winners of all these different contests together to make a team to produce a car that could actually drive in the real world on real roads. And here we're about to see, this is Stanley coming in for its victory lap in the Desert Challenge. We'll flash forward ahead to what we have today. Simply a car where Chris just pushes the button and the car drives away. This car has driven along ordinary roads and city streets with pedestrians. It's able to now, here for example, you'll see some people who are participating in our research for us. The car sees pedestrians. Here you can see the 3D 360-degree view of the world that it has as it moves through the world on a well-planted course, because it has a map of everything that's going. It deals with joggers, it deals with the rough traffic of San Francisco, deals with stop signs, left turns, people who are again participating in research. Going through the toll booth on the Golden Gate Bridge is something it's capable of doing. Going down Cannery Row in Monterey, the home of the first BIL, of course. Going on windy mountain roads, dealing with trucks that frankly would scare human drivers. Night and day are the same to the vehicle. And we even took it, as you have to, down Lombard Street in San Francisco. This is slightly sped up. It's able to do crazy things like merge onto the freeway. And the Stanford team, this is not Google, but they did some interesting parking experiments. Notice nobody was willing to park their car right next to the... So this is a mission for programmers to save the world. And here you can see the car as it sits today. On top of it is a 360-degree laser scanner. I think I can actually pull up my mouse here. That's a 360-degree laser scanner. There's a little radar up in the front there. There's a special odometer on the wheel, and there's GPS, and a little camera that sees the traffic lights there behind the windshield. That's what the vehicle looks like. Of course, over time, these vehicles will get a little sleeker, and they'll have car manufacturer type stuff on them. So most recently, in fact, last week, Nevada passed a law. Did I forget to start my timer? Well, I'm going to rely on you then. Yeah. Nevada passed a law to actually enable self-driving vehicles on the roads of Nevada. This is a picture of the governor of Nevada after he had been given a ride in the self-driving car. Nevada's law basically says you get a little endorsement on your driver's license and your license to operate one of these vehicles as long as it has been certified for safe operation in the state, and the law also outlines a certification process and a testing facility process and a way for people to test. So while early on in my talks, I and everyone I talked to would say, one of the reasons we won't see this for a long time is that you'll never get the government to react in advance and actually legalize things. Government's job usually is to stay in the way of things. There's been a surprising change in how that works. In fact, just this week as well, in California, State Senator Padilla has put forward a bill very similar to the Nevada bill. There he is also after riding the car, and the ride in the car does seem to convert people. And it's pretty similar to the Nevada law. It's going out, Google has of course already been testing in California. The vehicles have driven over 200,000 miles on California streets. They have never caused an accident. There have been a couple of accidents with the vehicles when they were in manual operation, which shows you how good humans are. And there's a similar law going forward in Florida and in Hawaii right now, and the idea is if this gets established and the law lies out, there'll eventually be a uniform law across the United States. One of the biggest announcements, although the technology is much, much simpler than what Google has built, is that Mercedes has announced that the 2013 S-Class, because with cars, if it says 2013, it means it comes out in 2012, that car will have a simplified automatic driving mode. So what it will be able to do is drive for you when you're in a traffic jam. It will only work under 40 kilometers an hour, 25 miles an hour. And what it will do is just really more of a smart cruise control. It can see the lane markers on the side of the road, keep the wheel within the lane markers, and then of course the cruise control you've already seen that can follow the car ahead of you using radar. This is a system that requires your attention. You're not allowed to read a book, watch a video, or have sex while using their system. Our system, we don't yet rate it for that either. However, I have stated that while some people have said that the mission of people in car safety is to get down to 0 fatalities, it's a goal that everyone would like to see, I believe that because of self-driving cars, we will soon see people who are conceived in cars while they're moving. And so we'll actually have negative fatalities. But I should have saved that for the boiler room. However, maybe we'll be allowed to tint all your windows in a self-driving car, so that might assist you with that. BMW and Audi and Volkswagen have all got plans going out. So Audi has announced they're going to do the same thing Mercedes is doing, but up to 60 kilometers an hour. And they have not set a year for that yet. BMW has demoed a car with the really fancy marketing name of Connected Drive Connect. I'm not... It's a German thing, I guess. Germans just smash words together, and that makes another word, and I think someone forgot that doesn't happen in English, unless you're doing web domain names. But anyway, Volkswagen has also got a product they've demoed called the temporary autopilot. Now, this is one they do intend to operate at full highway speed, but again, no year on that. Toyota has announced or demoed a concept car called the Avos. This is a major product inside Toyota. They haven't given a lot of public details about it. It features 4 lasers rather than the one big spinning laser on top. They haven't said what type they are. And it's going to be doing some automatic driving, and also several companies are pushing a valet parking mode so that you can have the car drop you off at the door of a building with a known parking lot, and the car will go into the parking lot and keep itself there and then come to you when you call it on your cell phone. There's academic projects all over the world. We've got projects at a variety of universities. An Italian university did a project where they tried to do an autonomous drive. They weren't able to do it all the time, but from Milan to Shanghai, which is pretty impressive because many people would say there are no actual roads between Milan and Shanghai. You give me, how are we doing? Oh, okay. Oh, you're having trouble. I'll get closer to the microphone, or I'll pick it up and hold it so that I can see my notes. This is a project that Google did. It was just a research project, and I'm sorry for the video on this. I had another video planned, but I wasn't able to clear it for release yet. But this is an example of sort of the car-on-demand concept done with golf carts to make it simple and cheap. So here we see a person going to a web page saying, "I'd like a car, please." The car comes out of the garage. You'll notice the lack of person in the car. Another guy says on his cell phone, "I would like a car." A car comes out for him, the golf cart, very stylish. And then she also summons one up on her computer, and off it goes. And these vehicles were designed to actually work on a more limited set of roads so that they would use sensors in the infrastructure, and something the other car doesn't do. But they would be pretty happy to handle intersections and move along through the lanes. And the idea is that the car would come to you. And in this case, for example, the person would decide to drive it themselves. They wanted to go through an area that it wasn't rated for driving. This is an early concept of one that couldn't go everywhere. He could cut someone off because he is driving. We would never have our robots do that. She sees that her car has arrived, the one that she ordered. She goes down, gets in her meeting. She also selects a destination where she's going to take it. And I'm going to I don't have a way to skip ahead to what you think would be the real thing. But this is the general vision. This is of someone who's busy and decides she's going to work on her laptop while she's driving. This is the long-term vision that I and many other people have of mobility on demand. You push a button on your cell phone, a vehicle comes to you. It's the right vehicle for the trip. I'm going to skip through this. And because it's the right vehicle for the trip, people finally ride in small vehicles. And that's what gives us the energy efficiency. That's what gives us vehicles that can refuel and recharge themselves, vehicles that can deliver themselves, so it's easy to share them. Suddenly, the old equations that demanded how cars were purchased, they change entirely. Robots don't care how inconvenient it is to recharge or refuel for a strange fuel or electrically. Robots don't care about anything. It's kind of nice of them, really, until we program them to care and complain, which I'm not sure we're going to do. Although I am going to program a robot to say, "Let my people go" at some point. Just because people want to see that happen. But this is pretty stunning. I mean, I think this is, aside from the 200 million tons of CO2, which is pretty cool, I believe that we spend $1 trillion of human productivity doing this. Right? That's what humans spend in the United States 50 billion hours every year doing. Pretty astounding. That's 8% of the GDP, and accidents in addition cost another 2.5% of the GDP. This concept of the right vehicle for the trip is what's important. Nobody will buy a small, except for Rains Cohen or some of the people here, will buy a really small, lightweight vehicle that can't go on the highway, is only good for trips across town. But the reality, that's the most of our trips, is short trips with one person across town. But since people won't buy that vehicle, we don't get the efficiency. But you don't care about the range of your taxi, and you don't care if your taxi can carry just the number of people that need to go on the trip. And that ability is what we can do to take the efficiency down. This vehicle here, which is a more extreme example, is 10 times more efficient, not just than a car, but than the average American transit system, and is 3 times more efficient than East Japan Rail, which is a much more efficient transit system than we have here in the US. So this is going to bring Moore's law into transportation. Transportation has been a field where, the pace of innovation doubles every 100 years. We from the internet world have got a pace of innovation where it doubles every 18 months. We're going to finally bring that into transportation and change that. This is technology that's bought not by municipal governments, and my apologies to the vice mayor here. Municipal government bureaucrats are not innovators usually. They are not early adopters. These individual vehicles bought by early adopters can change the world that way. So I'm going to take 2 minutes because people always have questions for me, so I'm going to take my last 2 minutes for questions, and you can go to my website for a lot more details. Yes, at the back.
How good are robocars at handling the very unusual situations like a construction zone where someone's waving you through or something like that? What's the plan of that?
Well, so the initial vehicles, for example, like the Mercedes and so on, have a human being in them. So they're not the golf cart that's empty that's running around. Because they have a human being in them, you can generally punt those problems to the human being.
What about the Google effort, like the most advanced car right now?
Sorry, what?
What about Google's effort, the most advanced car right now?
So because I am working on the team in ND8, I can't tell you the technical details of that are not public of the vehicle. Yes?
Charlie Strauss wrote about peer-to-peer between robocars to optimize. Is that coming?
It's coming, but not first, because every team out there is trying to build a car. There are no other cars on the road. The first car on the road doesn't have anyone to talk to. It's kind of lonely. So you don't solve the problem of communication between vehicles first. It's a problem that you get to solve when you have a large density of vehicles on the road. Yes?
How much does the hardware add to the cost of the car?
Well, the hardware I showed you today is quite expensive. So that laser is, okay, that laser is like $75,000. But with our friend Moore's Law and volume and so on, it's amazing. Everything eventually costs $10 at Fry's. I'm afraid I am out of time, but I'll be available for questions afterwards. Thanks very much. I mean, while the next speaker is setting up, I'll answer that question, but I don't want to take into anyone's official time. What was the question that was yelled? That'll be June 23rd in 2011 or 2021 at 4:55 p.m. So the reality is, of course, making that sort of prediction is always foolish, and I'm not going to make it specific on the date.
Have you talked to any taxi companies about this?
I haven't personally talked to taxi companies. I think they will love this. Their drivers will not. That's a short answer. All right. Thank you very much.
Three words: short, yellow cab.
No, the taxi companies are going to love it.
We'll see.